Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Great conversations. Steve, Charlie, Sarah, thank you all leading into this one and for joining us for this panel. We are doing a longer panel. I know for those of you who are watching the last two and thinking 15 minutes, we only got a couple of questions. We've got 40 minutes for this one, so we can really dig into those questions you all have, which is a kind reminder to ask your questions. Make sure you click that live discussion box, click over to questions, or if you're in the full screen view, click the questions there and ask away at any point in this conversation. Steve Donnelly, who just had the pleasure of sitting down with for a fireside chat, joins us as CCO from Amerisure. We have Charlie Wendland, who's the head of claims for branch insurance, and Sarah Hurst, who joins us from the customer success team at First Orion. So good mix of perspectives. We've got legacy, we've got startup, we've got solution provider. We got a lot to talk about. I do want to jump in with something that's really critical as a theme that keeps coming up with in claims around rapport, empathy, that human connection. You know, it's so critical because someone's gone through something terrible, and quite often they may not know that you're actually going to try to help them. You know, everyone's told them, well, your insurer is not going to stand by you. They're going to be difficult. So maybe they're coming in kind of adversarially. So we want to walk them through the situation, we want to help them and help them understand we are actually here on their side to get their life back together. So critical to be able to build that rapport and deliver that empathy. Charlie, I'm going to start this question off to you as I ramble on, give you some warning. But you know, we talk about technology, automation, digitization, all the things that we've been buzzing about for the past couple of years, especially. And a lot of times those questions turn to whether we're moving the people or they're putting us at a distance, or it's about self-service. So the insured's not getting that human moment. How do we think about defending the rapport building, the empathy, the human connection, when we're also simultaneously digitizing, self-service, enablement, all that kind of stuff? So we're still delivering that human feeling that leaves someone, you know, feeling taken care of and not just paid. Some thoughts from you as you're building the claims function out and thinking about that, I'm sure firsthand.
Yeah, and you know, branch is an insure tech, right? I mean, in that kind of sense of the subsegment of the industry. And so we are using a lot of automation and digital strategies for all parts of our business, certainly as it relates to claims. But the way we think about inserting digital strategies in the claims process is, one, will it improve claims efficiency? And then the second is, will it reduce some administrative burden of our adjusters so they can spend more time on complex issues or just providing that white glove service to our insureds? And then above all else, will it delight the customer? I mean, that's really what our goal here is. And so, you know, we're a little skeptical about certain parts of AI being integral to claims because, as you said, it is so much about building that rapport, not only with your insureds, but with claimants, all of these things setting you up for success long-term and getting that file to resolution. And so I think probably the best way we should be thinking about implementing digital strategy is to provide those efficiencies for the adjusters so it feels that much more seamless to the insureds.
Yeah, so instead of bragging about we do all these claims zero touch, you know, no one ever talked to anyone, should we be thinking about a different bar to measure against?
I think there's a space for zero touch, but I think they are the lowest of the low complexity matters, right? When you think about like glass claims, for instance, doesn't require a whole lot of human touch.
Yeah.
But I think by and large, we should, again, take a very strong look at how we're implementing that no touch philosophy, because I don't think it's a solution for every part of the claims process.
Yeah. Steve, I cut you off. You were about to jump in.
So to me, there's a couple of things that you need to think about, right? One is when you have that no touch process, how easy is it for a claimant to reach out and connect with a person, right? You need to make sure and be thoughtful to build that into the process. So when things aren't going the way they expect, you know, they can get there and it's easy. I think another thing that's important and that technology allows us to do is it allows the adjusters to focus on the rapport and focus on the relationship. As you take some of that busy work, the non-value activity off of their desk, they're not feeling like, oh, I've got this thing I have to do and I have to get off the phone. They can be more thoughtful and intentional in those interactions. So I think if you do it right, I think you can actually improve that rapport through technology.
And hey, Steve,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Brian. Sorry,
No.
I do want to, because you said something super interesting there too, which was, offering that what I heard was transparency into the process. That's exactly how we should be thinking about this digital strategy, is what can we reveal to the customer through self-service of whether it's the status of the claim, whether or not payment was issued. Because what are the number one complaints we hear as a claims department is, my adjuster's not calling me back and I don't know what's going on with my claim. So can we take some of those phone calls and emails off the adjuster's desk, to your point, Steve, about providing those efficiencies to allow that self-service be through just transparency into the status of the claim?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Brian.
No, this is great. Let the expert speak. Sarah, can I get some thoughts from you on this? Because one of the things that First Orion does is to help the technology help with the rapport building instead of supplant it. So can you talk about that issue a little bit, is thinking about these tools not in place of, but as sort of like jetpacks on the back of our rapport building?
Yeah, I mean, building on what Charlie and Steve said, and during this time when a customer is filing a claim, they really want to get somebody on the phone. They really want to explain the situation, want to get answers. So this is when a phone call is actually very important. And what we do is we brand that call to make sure that that customer does get that call, knows that their insurance is taking charge of their claim, is getting back to them in a timely manner. In case they missed that call, you can call back, because you know that we called you, and it'll be a missed call that says, this is your insurance calling you. We did do a survey for different policy members, and for them, phone call is the number one preferred method for contacting when they are doing a claim, because they have, questions, and they want them to be answered in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But we have that hesitation in answering the phone, because I mean, when my phone rings, it's typically someone, a robot trying to sell me something that, my credit card this, or satellite TV that, or what have you. But to know that it's actually the person you wish you had heard from, instead of just ignoring it, or, not taking that important call because you couldn't tell if it was just another, solicitor, or actually something meaningful on this major thing that you're facing right now and you're trying to get help on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that, the same survey, 60% of the respondents said that they missed a call from their insurance provider because they didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
But if they would have known, and, you have a better rapport with the customer, and you're able to get them faster customer support, which is what they want during this time.
Yeah. So the phone tag problem is a major one. Steve, you mentioned something that stood out to me as this sort of anxiety that I know anyone who's been at the desk, or an IA, field adjuster for that matter, that feeling of, I gotta get off this call and get to the next one, and I got to get through this task, because all of those, Charlie, to your point, all the reasons why people are unhappy are piling up. I can't get back to people. I can't give them, and it's not because you're incapable or you don't want to. Lots of technology that's been deployed to help with that today. Any thoughts on some of the things that are sort of on the horizon, or just brewing now, that you're excited about, that might help alleviate some of that pressure for adjusters? Steve, you're off mute first, so I'm gonna start with you, if you don't mind.
So the things that we're working on right now, really, a big piece is the texting. And that solves a lot of these problems, right? Sarah talked about the 60% who don't answer the phone, which I'm part of that 60%. That exponentially increases their work, right? Now they have a return call, they're maybe on the phone. Anyone who's worked a desk has been there. Now they've got messages waiting for them. Whereas having a text for those communications where it works well, right? We do a lot of work comp. And so for us to be able to text a claimant and say, hey, we're just confirming you have a doctor's appointment tomorrow, you're going to go, or, hey, we're confirming that, we just issued your check. Charlie talked about transparency through the process, and the text is a great tool to do that. And so right now that really is moving the needle for AmeriSure. So that would be the first thing I'd be focused on.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah,
we're doing this. Yeah, we're doing the same. Through our claims platform, we have omni-channel communication capabilities, and SMS is a big one. And not only will we be using it tremendously, but we're going to be automating it based on tasks that are completed throughout the claims process. So the claim system will be smart enough to know, we just contacted this person, we just completed this estimate. We're going to push an SMS to say, hey, estimate completed, click the link to access it here, right? So just as an example, all of that feels great. It's all very proactive with the goal of providing that transparency, but then also reducing the customer's burden of having to call to get a status update.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't make them do the work to hunt you down.
Exactly.
Well, and with that, tagging onto that, I will say that a lot of our customers that are insurance provider do the same thing where, the first is the call, and then they can follow up with text messages. But what happens when you use branded calling is you're able to get to the customer quicker, and you actually get more interactions where you're not having to call several times and wasting that time. So then again, it gets back into an effective process where customers answer the first time or call back within the hour. And then, like Charlie and Steve said, you can follow up with text messages just regarding the claims that have already been filed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're along those same lines. We're looking at a company I know you're familiar with, Usher, that offers basically a process that allows collects routine data, the type of things that adjusters really don't add value to on the front end of the claim, and helps move things along much more quickly and take tasks off the adjuster's desk where they're not making a difference. Really does.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're doing that at FNOL?
No, we're looking at them. So when the claims reported, and actually we're still investigating with them, with them, but when the claims reported, a text comes out with a link, and then they start the routine process of understanding what happened in that, not at FNOL, it's after we've received the claim.
Interesting.
Yeah. Comp's got a lot of data to collect throughout the process. So, and I know Usher's here as well, and there's benefits and disability, and there's a lot of these points where some of it's statutory or regulatory compliance. Some of it is for other reasons, but lots of different data throughout the process to keep things moving. And some of it would be great to be on the phone with them, and some of it is just data entry. So someone's going to have to rekey it, and the insured has the information in front of them. Should they be, or the injured worker in this case, should they be the one to complete it? I do want to jump to another question that we've had come in. And this is similar to a question we had in the first panel that we were tight on time in answering. So I'm going to be a stickler about making sure we really do answer this one, because now it's been asked twice. So it's a key question. This comes from Chuck Joyner, and it's: with all the changes in services and service options carriers are exploring and implementing, how are you educating customers about those options and how they improve the claim process? How successful are those efforts? So the big question is always, if you build it, will they come? Well, how do we get them to come? What are some of the things that Charlie, Steve, you're doing to get some of that adoption in the tools that you're putting out? And Sarah, maybe some of the things you're seeing different carriers do to help bring more adoption of these tools to smooth things out, or maybe get around the need for adoption because of the kind of tool that you implement. So there isn't a question of how the customer is going to accept it or not.
I'm happy to kick that off. Sure. We're in kind of a unique position in that we're building all of this from the ground up. So the processes that we're putting in place and the technology we're using is, what we've used since the beginning. Now, as an example, electronic first notice of loss. Sarah, I totally agree with you. I think there are some very complex, high severity claims that someone needs to speak with someone immediately. And we will always have first notice of loss phone availability for that. But there's a lot of claims too that people just want to file it through the app. And so we provide that functionality. And we had 50% adoption out of the gate with that, and that continues to climb. Something we're looking into now, and we have just surveyed a small sample of our customer bases, how do they feel about proactive first notice of loss? And so what I'm getting at here is the use of telematics, right? And so we are using telematics to monitor our insured's driving. And if we feel that they are good drivers according to our plan, we will provide discounts on their insurance. It's not punitive in any way. But there's a great amount of capability within that telematics scheme where it can detect collisions or what it thinks is a collision, and then shoot out a push notification to that party to say, hey, it looks like you've been into an accident. Do you want to file a claim? And then they can click yes and enter our portal. And so to answer the question, how we're gauging our customers' desire to have functionality like that is we're asking them. We're asking that small sample, and then we're building processes around those. And we are big on pushing out what is the first version of this process, understanding that we're going to iterate quickly, but let's just get something out of the gate. Let's test it and let's improve it over time.
You know,
Yes.
so Charlie, it's interesting. We have a similar function with our telematics, AmeriSure's commercial lines only. And one of our concerns and something we've been discussing is, do we want to be the first person to tell the insured that they had an accident? It's something that we're kind of debating about. I think we're going to roll it out as a test, but there are times when, you know, they're not interested in reporting a claim anyway. So it's an interesting challenge for CL's a little bit different. And also being a CL carrier, we have, right, our insureds often have, and most of them do, have risk management departments. So when we're rolling out new tools, part of what we'll do is we'll go to them and get their feedback before we even use one or implement it to understand what they're looking for. And we actually have a claims experience group today, and they're the ones that will go out and meet with the insureds and sit down with them and explain to them, whether it's at renewal or when we first acquire the business, kind of some of the benefits and the things that we can do. And they're also driving the implementation of these things by our insureds and our agents too.
Yeah, Steve, I can see the difference between personal lines, which we are in commercial, where I came from, because you're right. I can imagine that they maybe don't want their insurance company to know that there was potentially an accident right out of the gate. We subsidized cameras for a large fleet of commercial trucks, and we would monitor those and as for risk management purposes, but we'd also pick up accidents that weren't always reported. And then we'd occasionally call out to say, hey, seems like you were in an accident. Do you want to report the claim? And sometimes there was hesitancy there. So that's a point well taken.
Is it a trust point? Because they don't know. And I mean, I can definitely think of some personal line situations where people don't want to report. Whether they should or shouldn't is a different question. But to have that moment where it's like, oh no, my insurer knows about it. I was trying to avoid that. They're going to jack up my rates. Is that what the issue is? I know fleet management's a little bit different.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I think some of them have really high deductibles too. So
right,
they wouldn't
it's
be
irrelevant.
making a claim anyway. So they're like, what, you know, we don't want them to know we had another accident. It isn't every insured, but certainly it's something that we have to be thoughtful about when we're implementing a tool like that.
Yeah. Being thoughtful though, and getting in with the customers and sort of not just presuming what the solution should be and saying what's best for them, or presuming what it can't be. Either way, right? Getting that feedback and creating the right optionality in it. Sarah, any thoughts from you about ways that carriers are sort of navigating the customer adoption or comfort with some of these tools, or avoiding that issue by choosing what they implement or how they implement it?
Well, with us, again, what we're doing is we're branding their calls, but it's more than that. When we meet with any company, we try to learn their use case, try to learn their calling practices. Like you said, sometimes they're calling back to back, and then that might be an issue. So what we try to do, is we do an evaluation period where we look at how they're calling, how their data is looking like, so then we can give them advice on how we think they should be doing their calling practices, how their calls can be more meaningful, and hopefully we can reduce the cost, because we do know that having an agent calling at all times is expensive, and mostly if people are not answering. So that's something that we do. And then we also provide a lot of data back to our customers. We don't just provide answer rate, we provide contact rate, engagement rate. We also provide callbacks. We have a whole, we provide a whole deck that we can give them data back where they can make meaningful changes to, one, reduce cost, and then two, make their interaction more impactful.
So I'm hearing pretty consistently engage. Right, engage with
Yes.
the uninsured, with the carrier, figure out what the right answer is. And so to Chuck's question, I don't know that there's a silver bullet, but we're hearing some consistent things around, don't just presume it, talk to them, get feedback, make sure what you're delivering resonates with them. And from there, figuring out, well, how do we get that adoption where it needs to be if the solution is really fit for purpose? It's a great question. I have a feeling we may see it throughout the rest of this event, because this is something everyone's struggling with, right? We're investing in all these things. We did a lot of stuff kind of spur of the moment in the pandemic to keep claims flowing. And, yes, people have adopted because there was no alternative, but as alternatives start to reemerge, will people shy away from some of these new tools and new processes?
Or we've set a precedent where now it's going to be expected, right? I think you hit on a key there, which was the pandemic really sped up a lot of carriers' timelines for deploying this strategy.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything about customer acceptance or or feedback or whatever. But I would imagine now we've kind of set the floor for some of the processes that they expect around claims handling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Sarah, were you about to jump in?
Yes, I was just going to say, definitely every process will be different for different companies. Another thing that I keep hearing, it's an omni platform. There's just different ways you reach out to the customer. And I think that's why it's important to engage not only with your customer, but also see how the process is built and how we can better implement it. Yeah.
I want to take Chuck's question about customer adoption, but flip it internally. And Sarah, you touched on this a bit. What about our own people? So, how do we get our employees to adopt new tools, new ways of working? Charlie, even for you with building the team from the ground up, you've got people who have worked other places. You yourself, we're all used to things going a certain way. How do we make sure that we get that adoption? And talking to a number of solution providers, this is one of the things I hear quite often when they talk about their pilots and their proofs of concept is, only half of the adjusters were really using the tool, or we're worried about that. How do we get that adjuster engagement to make sure it's successful? How do we bring our people along for the ride, especially, back to the pandemic? Work from home, was front and center for everyone, but it's not going away for many carriers. And for those who have said it's going away, some of them are retrenching now because of some of the issues with retaining talent. So, getting that engagement and that adoption while we're also dispersed, it's that even harder. So thinking about kind of the employee side and what does the future look like for our people and how do we keep them engaged in some of these solutions? Steve, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I think it all starts with understanding the technology you're rolling out and how it impacts the adjuster before you do it, right? It's easy to, if you're not careful, to roll out a technology that actually doesn't make their lives easier. It doesn't make them more engaged. It doesn't allow them to do their jobs better. So making sure you understand how the technology impacts what they do day to day, and then giving them a whiffum, right? What's in it for me? This is why you want to be using this, because it does make your life better. And when you roll it out in a way slowly, or maybe not slowly, but to a smaller group, develop some champions, build some wins, and then start communicating that throughout the rest of the organization so that everybody understands at the end of the day, this person that does what I do understands how it works, how it benefits them, and is sharing it with me. And now I understand why I want to use it. That's how we've been successful. And getting those champions are so valuable. They are. And getting them on board is just critical.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. But engagement again, Charlie, is that different in your context or even more important? I mean, how does it play out in the startup context?
No, it's very much what Steve said. I mean, you asked the question, how do you bring them along for the ride? Well, you bring them along for the ride, right? Like you have them in the room because we have hired a team that has experience from other carriers, and we want to hear, what worked well, what didn't work well, what can we do differently here, because we are designing it, as you said, from the ground up. And so we have them in important meetings to understand, like, hey, here's this new technology we're going to deploy, or we're going to partner with this organization. Here's the efficiency it's going to provide to you that may have been a tremendous sore spot at another company, or something that was broken, but you knew you had 20 layers of bureaucracy you had to deal with. And then even when you got to the right person, they probably didn't have time to listen to you, so you just had to suffer in silence. Again, an advantage of growing something from the ground up is we are not encumbered with those type of processes. So we are really designing something from scratch here with the assistance of the team. Not feasible for every organization, right? We're smaller, so we have that luxury. But as Steve said, grab a couple champions, and that's change management 101, right? Get that buy-in so they can then be your representative out on the floor.
Yeah. Sarah, any experience from your end of implementing some of these tools, and maybe it's not something that the adjusters need to change their behaviors at all, but maybe you've seen some of that too, getting people to buy into these new tools coming online.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with Steve. It's, well, first, it's giving them the tools with technology. For us, we try to make our process and all of our products easy to adopt. When you do call branded with us, it takes about a minute. You just need to give us their numbers, give us what you wanted to say, and it takes a few minutes for us to set it up for you, and you don't have to mess with it again. Same thing with reports. You get your dashboard, you can see everything really quickly. There's nothing that's hard to get. Another thing is where, like I was telling you, we listen to what your use case is, what your call strategy is. And many times different product ideas come through that. We can, if the way we're giving you the report right now doesn't work for you, we can figure out different ways on how can we connect with your CRM? How can we give you that data that you need to make this more effective in an easier way that works with your process and with your flow.
So I want to build on this metrics point that you're talking about, Sarah, if you don't mind. We've all had the traditional claims dashboards with frequency and severity and volume of claims, and new versus the existing inventory, and all the different ways we can split that down, year of account, product, et cetera. NPS has been very front and center in the industry, especially the last few years. What are, as we have new tools coming in, customer engagement, customer experience is so much more front and center. What are some of the key metrics in a claims context in particular that you're thinking about? Steve, I'm going to keep hitting you first if your mute is off. So I appreciate you doing that, and Charlie probably appreciates it too.
So absolutely. For me, and we're a service organization, so that's how we differentiate. That's what AmeriSure focuses on. To be able to segment the Net Promoter Score by experience within the claims process, that's really where we want to end up. Right today, we have a survey process where after the claim's over, we reach out to them. How was the claim? Pretty routine thing, right? Net Promoter Score. But to be able to then say, well, how was your experience reporting this claim? And the adjuster just called you and gave you an update. How was that? Did you get all the information you needed? Do you have any other questions? Right? From a metrics standpoint, being able to segment out the levels of satisfaction, and then being able to dive in and identify, well, if we didn't perform as well as we should have, where did we drop the ball? Why do we drop it? What can we do to improve the process? And by the way, maybe identify where we dropped the ball the moment it happens, so we can rectify the situation when it happens in real time. That's the type of metrics that I'm excited to see and that we're looking forward to.
Yes, really digging in on the experience, the details behind it.
Yep.
Charlie, and yourself.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We are looking at those traditional spots of heartburn throughout the claims process and having some proactive call outs to say, hey, how are we doing right now? Rather than just doing that survey at the very end, right? And then that way we can get real-time feedback about the customer journey, identify any issues, and then correct the course. And then in addition to that too, we're taking a holistic look about how we think about the traditional metrics as it relates to timeliness and implementing these digital strategies. Should we be thinking about initial contact the same way? You know, historically it's been adjuster picking up the phone. Hey, Mr. Insured, saw your report claim. Everybody okay? What happened? Should we be thinking about it that way in terms of, you know, the time from when the loss is reported to that contact of picking up the phone? Or do we think about it in terms of when that SMS was sent or the email or things like that? And if we do think about that way, how do we think about it if those things are automated? You know, it's pretty interesting right now to look at those traditional metrics and kind of turn them upside down because of all of the new evolution that's happening in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things too, we talked earlier about rapport and understanding how technology impacts your rapport. To be able to break out that feedback and getting at what Charlie was saying, is a phone call the right way to do the initial contact? Well, to have that data allows us then to say, is that where a rapport is built? Or is that something that we can automate and focus on other parts of the experience? It really will drive change to the process in a good way.
Yeah, or understand better segmentation of who for which kind of person on the other end of the process does this or that or, you know, whatever modality seem to work better. And we had a point on the prior panel, don't use age as the proxy for whether someone's going to be, you know, open to tech or not. So can we get a better sense of, you know, what's the sort of the archetype of who's more appropriate for this kind of interaction versus that?
When you could add claim type into that as well, right? Sorry, Sarah. You could add claim type into that as well, like, you know, auto claims versus home claims versus, you know, a workers' comp claim. Sorry, Sarah.
No, it's okay. I was just to say, and that's something that we help too, because, you know, we have data from all of the calls that people make through our programs. You know, we get engagement, we get conversion rate, we get callback rate. We have so much data that we give back to the customer. And sometimes what they do is an A/B test. They, you know, segment their customers into different groups to see which group is best to call, you know, and I think that's a good point. You know, some people prefer a call, some people prefer text messages, and you can have that kind of testing and see, okay, was the engagement higher or was the engagement lower, and kind of base it off that.
Yeah. We've got a few minutes left. I want to end with a question that may be provocative, maybe not, but it's that word disruption that is definitely overused in the industry. You know, as we think about the disruption coming from the industry, you could really see it being led by customers in a lot of sense. And we talk about, Charlie, your peers at all the startup insurers, that those are the disruptors. And yes, and why is that happening? It's, you know, changes in customer demands, customer expectations, the way customers are doing things in so many other industries. How can we as an industry not just wait for customers to push us to do something, but bring some positive disruption to ourselves to keep pushing ahead? Are there, you know, is it a mindset shift? Is it a way of engaging with our people, with our customers? What do you all see as the engines of change from within the industry, rather than just the pressures from, you know, the Amazons and Netflixes of the world? I don't know if Netflix is the plural for Netflix, but we'll go with that. Charlie, I'm going to start with you instead of Steve for the last one.
Yeah, and I came off mute. I tried to get
there you go.
Steve, so
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think it's what Steve and I were talking about just moments ago. It's continuous customer feedback. We need to expect to engage with our customers more than ever. And again, it can't just be the survey at the end of the claim, and expect them to provide meaningful feedback about every step of the process. And so, yes, if we think about customers as disruptors, then we should really care about how and when we get feedback and how rich we want that to be. Now, we should also be sensitive to not make that a cumbersome process, right? And so if you think about it, when you catch a flight, and depending on if you're leaving Hudson News or boarding a flight, depending on the airline, there's the happy face meter where you're clicking the red if it was a bad experience, or green. Is it something as simple as that? Is it more free-form feedback? What's the most valuable and rich data that you can get to better understand how your processes are working and where they need refinement?
Yeah, that's a great point. Steve, Sarah, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I would say look at the pain points that your customers are having right now. What are the things that they're not liking about your experience right now? What are certain issues that they're experiencing, and that's kind of like how you can look into different solutions and look at different technologies that can help you alleviate that pain point, either for the insurer or also for your customer.
Yeah, Steve, I think you'd use the term heartburn. So those moments of heartburn. Yeah.
So from a commercial lines perspective, what AmeriSure is trying to do is understand how we can add value to our insureds, right? Because they'll have, personal lines, you get a claim hopefully once a decade, right? Commercial lines, though, you get claims. And so part of what we're trying to do is get data, working with our risk management group, and sitting down with our insureds to help them understand why they're getting claims, help them mitigate the losses, and help them manage their business, right? Be able to go to an insured and say, hey, most of your claims are coming out of this location and they look like this, and working with risk management for them to say, and we're going to help you avoid those and reduce them. And so we're not only looking at how can we make the claims process better, which I think is important if we're going to disrupt it, but also what can claims do to add value outside of the claims process. And I think that's, where the industry's starting to head a little bit as well.
Steve, can I go a little bit deeper on that? There's definitely been a lot of talk on proactive and risk management and risk avoidance, and being using some of the skills and tools we have in claims to prevent the claim, not just to respond better. Do you think in the wake of the pandemic and needing to deploy a lot more digital tools and do remote work and all those sorts of things, have we lost some of the steam on being more proactive and taking almost a claims to risk management view, or is that still alive and well? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that's what's going to win the day in the long term, is being better at that, being better at mitigating losses once they happen, right? If it's a workers' compensation claim, and then really adding value to the commercial insureds to help them avoid accidents in the future. And really technology is changing the way we're able to do that, whether it's wearables, telematics. We are gathering more and more information about the accident, and actually even information about near misses that we can share and help them understand how to avoid it in the future. So I think it's going to be a huge role going forward, and technology is just going to amplify it.
That's great and strong forward-looking point to end on. Emma's back to usher us along, but thank you, Steve, Sarah, Charlie. Great conversation, and to everyone who tuned in and the questions that we got.
Thanks for having us.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So